Can you all hear me? Yes. I end up talking a lot with my hands, and so sometimes I hit the microphone, so I'll try to do my best. Well, thank you everyone for sticking around. I know we're getting close to the end of the day. As Craig mentioned, I lead our global sustainability group, and as the people that I work with, I have a team of experts here today from Intel. I love talking about Intel's water story, and hopefully you'll see why after this presentation. So you're gonna keep me on time, Craig.
Yes, I am. You're doing great. We're doing
Awesome. All right, so if I can advance slide. No, there we go. So first, I just wanted to show this as kind of give you some context. This is our manufacturing sites around the world. If I showed you every Intel site, you probably wouldn't see much because it would be covered in dots. But compared to some other manufacturing models, we have a handful of large manufacturing sites. So these are our manufacturing sites around the world. You can see we have 3 in the US, 1 is being built, and we're in Ireland, Israel, China, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Those are our large manufacturing sites that have a very large water footprint. And one of the reasons I like to show this is I'm sure you can look at the map and say, wow, there's some water stress in some of those areas, right? Israel is in the Middle East. Arizona, pretty hot and dry there. So water is really critical to our business strategy. It's really important from a risk mitigation standpoint. So our sustainability approach, we have kind of 3 pillars. The first one is our direct environmental footprint. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. That's what my team works on. So we're a manufacturing company. You compare us to a lot of tech companies where their manufacturing is in their supply chain. So it's the same issue, just in a different scope. But for us, it's our direct footprint. We operate maybe a couple data centers for us, and I say data centers because that's the conversation a lot of people are hearing around water risk, but we are part of those data center supply chain. So we make the chips, which are essentially the brains of the data centers. And so our large customers, they're looking to us to help meet their goals. So we also focus on, as I mentioned, building sustainability into our products and services, and then collaborating with our customers and suppliers. I know there's 2 people here from our supply chain team, somewhere sitting in, there's one right there, if you want to talk to him about supply chain. But what I'm going to be talking about today is Intel's direct water footprint and what we're doing to mitigate this water risk. So first, I wanted to start with why. I know when I joined Intel a little over 11 years ago, I had never worked in the tech industry. I knew nothing about what semiconductors. I couldn't believe actually what was involved in it. It was just this mythical thing that these geniuses are creating, and I had no idea what was really involved. I would have had I'm an environmental engineer, and when I started there, I had no idea the water footprint that semiconductor manufacturing has. So this is, I know you can't read the whole graphic, I'll read it for you, but this was part of a study from the World Economic Forum. This is not Intel data, but they looked at the semiconductor industry overall. And an average chip manufacturing facility today can use 10 million gallons of water a day. I mean, just think about that, 10 million gallons of water a day in places like Israel and Arizona. So clearly water is important to us. And then to maybe put that in context, that's the equivalent of about 33,000 US American homes a day. So it's an issue for semiconductor manufacturing all the way through the supply chain down to how our products are used. Semiconductor manufacturing is a highly complex process, maybe arguably the world's most complex process. And water use in semiconductor manufacturing is not just a factor of your output. It is also largely a factor of the process that you're manufacturing. And with each new technology, that gets more complex. The more chips that are made and how they're used drives this complexity. And a lot of the way that we focus on this from a product standpoint is building energy efficiency in, which also reduces that indirect water use. So very few municipalities around the world. We operate around the world, and there's only 2 where we even have the option to purchase reclaimed water, both in the US. One is in California and one is in Arizona. So most of the water that we take in is fresh water, and we use a lot on site. I'm going to talk about that more in the next few slides. But what that means is that a lot of companies don't have an option to buy recycled water. Intel, we have the advantage of having huge sites. If you haven't seen a fab site, drive out to Hillsborough. I mean, it's like a college campus. It's huge. And so we have the space to build some of these systems where smaller companies do not. And they don't have an option to buy recycled water. So I just share that as building why I'm talking about water today in the tech industry. And the other thing I'll mention, I think that the semiconductor industry overall, for whatever reasons drove them to be there, have done a really good job of building this sort of water resilience into their operations. Maybe because we have to, but there's been a lot of innovation. Some of our peers that don't operate yet in the US, but in Asia, they've done a lot. They reuse a lot of water. And so that does solve some of it, but it doesn't solve all of it. And I'll talk about it a little bit more with our water footprint. You have to excuse me, like my throat's super dry, so I'm like scratchy. I hope you all can hear me okay. So recycling water, reducing the amount of water that you use, say in a cafeteria or a bathroom, it doesn't solve the whole water risk problem, because for us, a portion, oh, thank you, Roberta. Sweet. Maybe I'll sound a little better there. Thank you. That was quite the service. I'll give you a tip later. That was so nice. Okay, thank you. Maybe I won't be so scratchy now. I get bad allergies in the winter here from they say it's the hazelnut trees. Yeah, I know. Who would have thought they bloom in the winter? So anyway, the last point I was trying to make on that side is that as much as companies have done, and Intel, we've invested billions of dollars, our peers have invested billions of dollars to reuse water. Part of our operations, consuming water. So for us, that's largely like evaporation and cooling towers. That part, and using the water in our process, we can't just take away. So I'm going to talk about what Intel is doing to mitigate some of this water risk and address and think about the future of where we operate around the world. So this is our water strategy. It goes across 3 pillars, and I'll say the overall objective of what we're trying to do is reduce the impact on our freshwater resources. So that is in 3 parts. The first one is reducing the amount of water that we use in our operations. And then the second is reusing. So this could mean maybe the same amount of water we use, but we're taking in less fresh water. So we're reusing it more on site to benefit, reduce water impact that we have in our watersheds. And the third is restore. So I'll talk about this even a little bit more on some of my slides, but the restore piece is what we're doing to close that gap, what I say is a gap in our water balance. So we take in all this water that we take in. Globally, we only return about 80%. And that's because that 20%, and this is across all of our sites, an average, that 20% is being evaporated. So we can't just capture and reuse. So we had to find a way to benefit our watersheds from this impact that we're making, and it's not a small impact. Clicker. Okay. This is an actual picture of our water reclaim facility here in Oregon. Are you in that picture? Is that you? No? Okay. I thought it might be Ashley. So what we've done, our commitment that we've made is to reach net positive water by 2030. And really what that means is for every drop of water, of fresh water that we're bringing into our operations somewhere, we're either directly returning or restoring through a portfolio of watershed projects more drops of water. And that can be reduced, as I mentioned, less water use in our operations. It can be funding projects. And also, we have some really great partnerships with our local municipalities that have done a lot around conservation and restoration. So what net positive water means, and we have under that, there's two main components. So it's the conservation. We need to make sure that our operations operate efficiently. And so that includes everything from these large scale. This is our water reclaim facility in Oregon. And our water reclaim, we have three. We have one in Arizona, Oregon, and Israel. And our US ones, their capacity is like you guys fact check me if I say it wrong, but it's like something like 2 billion gallons a year. So we really, these plants are like a municipality, but we have them on site. And again, not a lot of companies have even the space on their property to do that, but we do, not that it was an easy process. So 2 parts of the goal for what net positive water means is conserving 60 billion gallons of water in our operations and through these community partnerships. So we need to be doing this in our operations. And then the second piece is watershed restoration projects. And you're actually going to hear from one of our great partners, Heather Schrock at Bonneville Environmental Foundation, that really helped us on this program a lot. So the restoration piece, I think, is really what makes this unique. Less unique these days. I see so many companies jumping on this concept of setting water goals, and we were the first in the tech industry. And one of the benefits of the tech industry, I guess, in this capacity is very competitive. So when Intel announced that we were doing it, all these other tech companies reached out to us and said, how are you doing it? And then you saw this momentum building. And I'll talk about those a little bit more. But that's basically those projects. They are not Intel projects. I'm not the watershed expert. Intel's not the watershed expert. So what we're doing is issuing grants. We're funding projects with the experts, those nonprofit organizations that have a track record of being successful in implementing these types of projects. And I can tell you, coming from the corporate side, that is not easy to navigate. And we're so grateful BEF because they have, Todd, their CEO that I worked with a lot, he would say he speaks the language of corporate and nonprofit and kind of the matchmaker, which was, it's surprisingly hard to find water restoration projects. There's no marketplace, at least let them tell me if there's anything new, but it's, it's a lot of groundwork to get there because I talked to like a local water conservation district and they're like, we would have never approached Intel. We had no idea you were interested in investing in your watershed. So that's been an immense pleasure working with all those nonprofit organizations. So going a little bit more into the conservation side, the chart on your left, this was just taken from our corporate responsibility report. The green is the amount of water we conserved in billion gallons. The blue is our freshwater withdrawals over the last 5 years. And so I'm really excited to see that it was about 7 billion gallons in 2020 and almost 11 billion gallons by the end of 2024. So we have increased significantly. It took a lot of work to get there. I mean, like I mentioned, the billions of dollars investment and teams of engineers working on this at our sites to get there. But it's almost a 50% increase in conservation. So we're well on our way. What we're doing to get there is a mix of different things. We have, as I mentioned, the on-site water reclaim. We have the 3 large projects, but then we have smaller ones like at our site in India. They also reuse water on site there for landscaping, restrooms, that kind of thing. They're not a manufacturing site. We have a lot of people at Intel focused on building efficiency into our operations, which reduces costs for the company, but it also reduces our resource impact. And then, as I mentioned, we have a couple great community-type partnerships. One actually in Israel, that I just get excited to hear more about. We have a partnership with the municipality there that we have that large on-scale water treatment. Once it's treated, the brine, the salts, that actually goes, it's piped to a power, an electricity provider, and they use that water in their cooling towers and then discharge it back to the sea. The other part of the water goes to the local farmers because they're not like the US. They're okay with using recycled water on crops. So they actually, that water is reused in the agriculture space, which there's a lot of in Israel. So they, it's like a win-win that we're able to provide something that allows more farmers to have access to water, and you know, it just reduces that overall water impact in our watershed. And then one thing that I think has really helped us, several years back, we developed what we call the GWMG, or Global Water Management Group. And that group was really, I don't know if Irina is still in here. I was going to give her a shout out. Okay, I don't see her. Anyway, she actually was one of the engineers many, many years ago. We worked together through teams like EHS. But having a focused team that was, you know, a dedicated person at each of our manufacturing sites, we had to build that so we had, everybody was operating on the same roadmap. We were looking at, hey, we did this project at one site, can we do it at another, or let's come up with something. So she kind of started a little grassroots, got the engineers together, and we just saw such great results from that we formally put together this GWMG, and now Ashley is leading that. Wave to everyone. So that one we have established what we call water champions, and these are people that have, they have part of their scope is actually defined as being a water champion. So they have their day job, then they have their time where they're focused on water conservation, because I think the last presenter mentioned as well, you want to have somebody who knows how to make that more efficient. You talk to the engineers that work on it every day, and then you give them a platform to do that. We made it like a job scope that we got approved with their managers, so it's not just a side gig for them, and they're usually the most passionate people. They've been wanting to do these projects for a long time, but they haven't had the money. You know, that's also what we provide for these projects, the money or the agreement with their manager to work on it. So the Global Water Management Group now has really formed to be more formal than what was originally put together. And just the amount of water that we've conserved and the projects that have been implemented because of bringing that together. And this was like a no cost. I mean, it's people's time, but there was no capital involved. There was, I mean, we had a budget for projects, but there was no additional cost in putting something together. We weren't outsourcing this work. It was bringing the engineers together, the right people, the right place, and giving them what they need to be successful. The water restoration part of our goal here, this is also a chart that I know you probably can't read all of it, but I'll explain. And you can pull up our corporate responsibility report anytime if you'd like, if you really want to see the numbers. But our water restored is slightly different. So these are projects, as I mentioned, none of them happen at Intel. Intel is not involved in developing or implementing the projects. And I say that because we're a tech company. We are not the watershed experts, but we work with the nonprofits that are. And I think we've been really successful in that way because what they need is dollars. And what we need is projects that meet our net positive water commitment. And we want to have projects that resonate with our communities. And this is a big difference actually when you look at like a climate type of project. Water is so local. So for a water restoration program, we set criteria before we went out and just started funding these watershed projects. We said, what's important to us? What are we going to focus our dollars on? And BEF was another shout out. Huge help when we were setting this strategy. And so what was important to us is that it was a contextual approach. And what I mean by that is because water is so local, we want to be working with the local watershed experts. Sometimes we work with large nonprofits like the Nature Conservancy, and sometimes we work with like the Mackenzie Watershed District, which is super small, like a handful of people. But they're the experts, and what they need is the dollar. So that's what we help. And then also, I think hearing from BEF has told us that just even a tech company with the visibility that Intel has actually gotten more engagement and more dollars behind projects, which is like amazing to hear and to see how many tech companies are engaged and have goals in water stewardship. It's wonderful because we all touch water. It's all critical to our business in some way. Another thing I'll just mention about the water restoration projects, I said we partner with the local watershed experts. The projects that we select, that we have funded, there's been a few that are exception, but we issue a one-time grant, and these projects are so amazing that they often have permanent or long-term. Like what we look for is about a 10-year. Those projects are going to continue to provide that benefit and not be degraded. And so we make sure that we build in our agreements with our partners that they're monitoring it, we're getting data, and so we know that that is still in place. And then as if our water use changes, that's the other part of our goal that I'll mention, is it's based on our actual water use, year to year. So our target changes. And I say that because sometimes as we grow, our water use might increase, or because our new process technology might be more water intensive. That goal is based on the previous year's actual water use and consumption. So we're making sure that and the goal is based by country. So it's not just a global goal. So if we're using more water in one place, that's where we're putting the dollars, in that watershed. And the projects themselves, this is also how we work with our nonprofits, is that we make sure, or what we're looking at is solving a local water challenge. So a project in Arizona can look a lot different than a project in Oregon. In Arizona, it's so much about making sure that there's flows during the heat of the summer. And then in Oregon, a lot of the projects are reconnecting like a side channel to the Willamette River that keeps the water temperature from getting too hot to protect fish populations. So it's very much that local context. And that's exactly why we look for the great partners. And we give them the money, and we keep tabs on it, making accountability, but we just kind of get out of their way and let them do their work. And I don't think we've had a single project that hasn't had a strong positive outcome. It's like usually they're outperforming what they told us. So I absolutely have had the opportunity to work on funding some of these projects because it's so outside of what we would normally do in corporate sustainability, and because it's local, you really get to see the result of it. Like you can go out and see it. Most of my career has been air quality and climate change. That's a lot of like numbers, and yeah, you can see the impacts of climate change, but you can't usually like go out and see one project, the results of that. So this was newer for me when we started funding these projects, and I really love that part. Oh, I missed one bullet there, sorry. I will say that all of our projects have some type of biodiversity benefit. Now, the way that we claim our progress toward this goal is by a calculated or modeled volume of water that has been restored. And restore, we define, that can be save, protect, treat, or return. So it's a broader definition than just water conservation. Sometimes it's in-stream flow protection, meaning a farmer or a rancher is getting financially incentivized to use less water. And that helps them, and that there's more water in the river. The other part is that I think there's only one exception, and it's actually here in Oregon, but every project that we fund, because we want to make sure that we're restoring water exactly where we're using it, All of the projects have some hydrologic connection to our sites. Only one here was in Bend because it's such an important area for the people that live in the Pacific Northwest. We did fund a project there, but they're all either upstream, downstream, some type of connection to Intel and how we impact that watershed. These are just some of the stats on our progress. And this is through 2024. So we achieved and maintained net positive water in 4 countries, the US, India, Costa Rica, and Mexico. And I'll just, for other context, US is about half of our water use as a company. So that's not insignificant for us that we've achieved that. And we also, in 2023, earned the Alliance for Water Stewardship Platinum certification, which is, I don't know if people are familiar, there's very few companies, even in the US, and our industry that have gotten platinum. And we were told by AWS auditors that it's kind of unheard of your first time around to get platinum. So that was really exciting. And then last year we maintained that. You have to go through another audit process. So for conservation, we've invested $1 billion, and that's actually pretty low. That doesn't include the large water reclaim facilities. So those are just large, medium, small projects within that number. And then I think what we saw was a couple $2 billion for the water reclaim facilities. So that could either double or triple that if you count those large projects. And then I showed the chart with the 10.5 billion of gallons conserved. That's about almost a 50% increase from our baseline year. And then for water restoration, we funded 47 projects now to date with nonprofits, again, with the watersheds where we operate. And then just last year alone, our projects that we funded restored close to 3 billion gallons of water. And those projects, as I mentioned, because we're funding those projects that are permanent or long-term, these projects will continue to restore for many years. And then if that changes, if some of those projects meet the end of their contract, then Ashley's going to be out looking for new projects to fund. So this, I won't get too down in the weeds here unless anybody wants me to, but this is really a diagram of our water footprint. And you can actually see, if you want to see the data, you want to see the numbers, in our corporate responsibility report, which is intel.com/responsibility. In the appendix, we have a very detailed water inventory table, which follows the GRI guidance of what to disclose. So that's all of our material sites, our water use, whether it's groundwater, surface water, conservation, restoration. It shows exactly what water body we're withdrawing and which one is the discharge ends up in. And that we voluntarily disclose that information because we think that we should. We are a large water user, and it's just that data piece of it kind of over time has continued to grow in what we disclose. And I honestly, when I joined Intel and I saw all of this, I was proud to be joining a company that was transparent, because we're talking about how much water. And then in that table, if you want to see, it's actually flagged following the WRI definitions of extremely high or high water stress. So you can see exactly where we're located and the water, where it's coming from, and then those that are under that water stress. If you're interested in the data, it's there. So what's shown up here, does laser? All right. So we're here in the blue on the left. Excuse me. Can you all see that? It seems really tiny. Okay. Over here on the left, I feel like I'm in a college lecture or something here. So on the left, this is the incoming water. So the highest amount, a little over 10 billion gallons. This is for 2024, just a reminder. That was the amount of fresh water that we purchased from our utility. So you can see our other water inputs are smaller. This is still the largest portion of our water usage, but our water conservation, as I mentioned, our aim is to reduce the amount of fresh water that we use. So over here on the left, other sources of water that we take in. In Israel, one of the water sources is desalinated water. And then over here, there's the two utilities. The two are the only two around the world we can, where we purchase reclaimed water from our utility at about 0.3 billion gallons. And then we also, where it's beneficial, we use some rainwater capture, which is still counted as a freshwater source. And then we have 2 sites that have on-site wells. So we count that as well, but we're not technically purchasing it. And then the center rectangle, that really just represents all of our operations around the world. And I already shared with you, this is where we focus on water efficient operations, investing in conservation. And then to the right is our water out. So you can see that we're returning about 9.5 billion gallons of water back to our municipalities. And then last year, the restoration piece that restored water to our watersheds was about 3 billion gallons. And then up here in the yellow, this is where when I talk about our gap in our water balance, we're evaporating almost 3 billion gallons of water, mostly through our cooling towers, in some cases like taken up by plants and irrigation, but that's a pretty small amount. And then, so that's, if you look at that number compared to the water restoration, that's the gap that we're trying to close by doing these projects. That was my last slide. I think we have time for a question? No. Maybe a question? Maybe if there's a quick question, otherwise I need to hand it off. But I put this, oh, it went away. Well, I can just tell you. It's okay. If you wanted to learn a little bit more about it, we have a water website. It's just intel.com/water. This is where you can see those restoration projects. Those are the ones that people are always really excited to read about. So we have project summaries for everything that we funded, and then detailed annual reports. And then to get to our corporate responsibility report, if you want to see our detailed water inventory in the appendix, it's intel.com/responsibility. Now you can turn it off.